Hi, welcome to our session on how to think like a thin person. Okay, so why have I included this in the course? Well, so much of our mindset and our habits comes from our subconscious. So in other words, the part of our mind that we aren't consciously aware of. So the thoughts and beliefs that we have that have built up through our lifetime that might be come from teachers, parents, friends, society. These beliefs could have come from anywhere, but they find their way into our subconscious, and then we believe them to be true, and we kind of act accordingly. It then goes a step further, and whenever we sort of question something, or whenever let's say we doubt ourselves, our subconscious will provide evidence to support that from what it's got stored in there. Like it's like a big library of information stored. So I'll give you an example to explain what I'm saying. If you have a belief that you're fat and you can't lose weight and you've tried everything and nothing works, your subconscious will give you evidence to support that, and then you're into this sort of cycle of perpetuating the belief and things being difficult, and you might try and lose a bit of weight, but it's all a bit half-hearted, and you're not really believe it's going to happen for you. Well, it can happen for you, and it will happen for you. Every day on social media I see new videos of people who put up their before and their after, and the change is just incredible. Now these people may once have not believed they could do it either, but because they took on the right mindset and did what they needed to do and just gradually kept chipping away at it, taking the little actions day in day out, they've got the results, and quite honestly they look stunning. So back to the title of this session, which is how to think like a slim person. What I strongly recommend you do is to tell yourself that you're a slim person now. Now, it might be, there's a little bit of padding, there's a little bit of work to do, there's a little bit of sculpting. But if you think about a sculptor with a block of stone, and they start chipping away here and chipping away there and then creating this masterpiece, that's what you're doing. So you are the slim person, but you're just working on those few little areas that you're not currently happy with, step by step. We've already said break it down step by step. So I'll give some ideas for how I found people who think slim, how they think, how they sort of approach life, and how they approach food. And this has been based on a lot of the work that I've done with ladies who needed to lose weight, or who wanted to lose weight. I'm so sorry. So I'll go through this list. There is a handout, but we'll go through it now just in case you haven't seen it. So slim people generally eat food which they enjoy. So we've already talked about not having deprivation, not having abundance. It might be you need to tweak. So if you're currently a chocolate lover, but you're also quite like strawberries, it might be that you choose to buy more strawberries than chocolate. Just a thought. And then when you're looking for a snack that's something that you enjoy, that's a bit of a treat, there it is already waiting for you. And on that, actually, another little tip. I've already said don't ban any food. Might be a good idea not to have things in the house that are likely to tempt you. So if you like eating biscuits, or you like eating cake, or you like eating chocolate and they're likely to trip you up, by all means go out and buy them when you make the conscious decision that you're going to eat them. But if you have them in the house, then they're there, and it's more likely to be a trigger for mindless overeating, because you can just eat them and then regret it immediately afterwards. Whereas if you've got to make the conscious decision to put your shoes on and walk to the shop to buy it, you've got to think that through. You might still choose to do it, and that's fine, but at least you've thought it through. So back to the slim people. They eat food which they enjoy. They don't not eat cake or things like that. They just eat them, when they choose, as a treat, rather than it being a sort of a habit or an everyday thing. They also say no thank you to food that they don't want. There is a little bit of game out there in society for, if somebody's overweight and they want to make improvement, they can be seen as a bit of a game. So, let's just get them to be on, go on, you have it, and all of this kind of stuff. Whereas a slim person just wouldn't tolerate that. They just say, oh no thanks, I don't want that, and then they carry on. So that's quite a good habit to learn, I think. Of course, if you want it, that's a different story. But if somebody's trying to encourage you to have something, maybe you're at work or I don't know, you're out and about and somebody's trying to encourage you to eat something and you really don't want to have it, then just say no thank you and move on. And you don't have to explain. You know, it's the same as if you say no, you don't want an alcoholic drink. You don't have to explain. You just say, oh no, I don't want that right now. And that's that. Slim people eat when they're hungry and then stop when they're full. And I'll follow on from that with the next point, which is they tend to focus on food when they're eating it. Paul McKenna, the hypnotist, wrote a book about eating when you're overweight and how to lose weight. And he said people who are overweight tend to think about food all the time, except when they're actually eating it. And I think certainly from my experience, that is quite true. So I said earlier on in this course, what I'd like you to learn to do is to get back in touch with your body again. If you've been overeating and eating the wrong foods, you've probably lost touch with your body and the messages it's sending you. So you need to learn to listen again. And one of the key things to listen to is when your body says, when your stomach says, I'm full, that's it, I've had enough. And you're only going to notice that if you're eating consciously. So if you're somebody who tends to grab a sandwich on the run or eat while you're watching TV or not really be focused on your food, maybe one of the small tweaks you could make is to change that and to actually sit and focus on your food and enjoy it and taste it and notice the texture and the smell of what you're having, so that you're really eating consciously. And then when you do feel full, say, right, I've had enough. If you don't like wasting food, as I don't, maybe it can be put aside as leftovers or as food later on, another meal maybe. But just really focus on what you're eating. Eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. Another thing slim people do, by eating consciously, they are aware of whether they are enjoying the food. They stop eating if they decide they don't like it or they don't want the food. If you watch the Great British Bake Off, you'll be aware of Prue on there who has Prue Leith, she has a saying, it's not worth the calories, or it's a waste of calories. So if you're eating something and you think, do you know what, I'm really not enjoying this, just stop. I've had this a few times where I tend not to eat sweet things these days, but maybe I'll think, oh, I'm just going to treat myself. But what's happened, because I don't tend to eat sweet things, my taste buds have changed so much that when I try something, I think, I'm not really enjoying this. And so I'll just stop, because I'm not going to eat something that's not particularly healthy that I was only having anyway as a treat, and it's not a treat because I'm not enjoying it. So just stop. So if you're not eating a food, even if it is something that is supposed to be a treat for you, don't waste the calories, leave it, and then you can indulge on something else another time. Slim people generally throw away food. Now, I don't like wasting food, but there is an argument to say that if you eating it and then being unhappy with your body or being unhealthy is worse than throwing food away, you're not going to be able to package up your leftovers and send them off to starving children, wherever starving children are in the world at the moment. If you want to deal with that problem, by all means make donations or get involved with supporting charities that do. That's a different issue. What we're talking about here is how you treat and respect your body. Your body is not a rubbish bin. So if the choice is putting the food in the rubbish bin or putting the food into your own body, then throw it away. Slim people generally have ways of satisfying their emotional needs other than eating. Now, this was where we were going with the session on the Wheel of Life, which is why I wanted to do that first, because it may be that you've realised from doing that activity that there are emotional needs that aren't being met. So that's a different issue. Your task there is to find another way of those emotional needs being met. Maybe you need to have a conversation with somebody. Maybe you need to increase your support network. Maybe you need to exercise more to release some of the pent-up frustration that you've got in your body. Whatever it is, but find ways of meeting emotional needs that don't involve food, or I would add alcohol. Slim people don't regard mistakes as an issue. If they overeat at one meal, they naturally eat less later because they're tuned into their body's needs. So, you know, we're human, we're not perfect. Sometimes we're going to overeat, sometimes it'll be through choice because we're at an event or a wedding or on a holiday and we want to, part of going on holiday is to enjoy the local food. That's absolutely fine. But then don't let that derail you after the event. Contain the eating to the event that you're at, and then when you leave it, stop. And also, I've already said earlier in the course, you know, it doesn't stop you before, right up until you go to that event. There's absolutely no reason why you can't continue with your healthy eating plan. There's really no reason why you can't get back on it again afterwards. So don't sort of delay starting or delay taking action because of something that's happening in a couple of weeks' time. You can do a lot. You can make a lot of change in a couple of weeks. Slim people might have a treat instead of a meal, for example, a cream cake. Now, I can't remember who I heard, but somebody did a sort of little mini survey where when they were queuing up in the cake shop, they would say to slimmer people, oh, you're managing to eat that and not put on weight. How do you do it? And there would always be something like, oh, this is my lunch. I just fancied this and I didn't want to get a sandwich, or so I'm having a cake instead of a sandwich. So that's okay. Obviously, if you do that every meal, not very healthy. But, as a once in a while, if you really fancy something and, there's no point in, let's say, having a sandwich first to make the cake the pudding if you don't really want the sandwich. Or maybe even if you buy a pack of sandwiches, you might just eat one and save the other one for later so that your cake's compensating. So these are the kind of thing that slim people do. They kind of, they work it all into the overall plan rather than it being, an extra. It's included and it's not doing any damage because it's included. Does that make sense? Slim people generally keep in mind special occasions and events that when they want to look their best and prepare accordingly. Now, I've already said if you've got an event in a couple of weeks' time, don't delay starting. What I've noticed people who are naturally slim tend to do is, they'll figure that out. They'll think, oh, I'm going to go to that wedding and I'm going to see people I haven't seen for a while. I really want to look my best. So they actually put more effort in beforehand to make sure that they're looking their best when they get there, rather than thinking, oh, start the diet afterwards. So they, people that who appear to be naturally slim are, they're always looking great at special occasions. That isn't an accident. They're planning for that and they're doing it deliberately. So maybe there's something to learn there. I don't know. Slim people don't weigh themselves. I don't weigh myself. When you're tuned into your body, you don't need to. If your clothes fit. If your jeans have got a bit tight or there's a bit of a muffin top coming. So that's why I suggest don't weigh yourself, because there's so many other ways that you can notice whether you're getting the results you want and get the rewards that you want. Slim people have found balance in their eating habits. Food is of low importance to them. And again, that's why I'm following this on from the Wheel of Life, because if you're getting your life in balance, if you're having fun, if you're doing things that you enjoy, if you're looking your best, if you're doing all the positive things that we're talking about here, then hopefully food will become less important to you too. And you will want to use it more as a healthy energy fuel rather than as a sort of comforting treat. Slim people are aware of the consequences of eating certain foods. For example, they avoid alcohol if they have a big presentation the next day, or they avoid foods which have a lingering smell if they're seeing clients. So I'm not saying that you don't, by the way, but just, it's just, again, it's that awareness. Whereas, some people that I've worked with who have had issues with overeating, they just go home, they eat or what have you. Whereas people who are sort of tuned into the consequences, they don't, they won't have alcohol because they don't want to have a hangover when they've got something important to happen the next day. It's all about awareness. So the final point on this list is they don't food shop early for Christmas, and you can put any other event in there. So, in this day and age, it doesn't matter what's coming up. We've got shop for Easter, shop for summer, shop for going back to school, shop for Halloween. There's always some sort of special treat in the shops that is encouraging us to to shop early. Now I've used the Christmas one because I think, you know, the Christmas goodies normally appear in the supermarkets kind of September or October time. But as I say, you can replace this for any other special occasion through the year. You know, if you're going to buy the special foods that we have at Christmas in October, which they will encourage you to do, the shops will encourage you to do this. They do that because they know fine well that if you've got a nice packet of Quality Street or something in your house, you're going to eat it. And then and you're going to eat it in sort of October time. So then you're going to go back and you're going to buy whatever it is they've got on special offer for Christmas the next week. And you're probably going to eat that too. Right? So by the time you get to Christmas, you will have eaten your way through, or not you personally, we as consumers will have eaten the food that we bought for that special occasion and then gone back and bought some more. So don't shop early for Christmas. Again, I dramatically cut back on the foods that I buy as sort of the special Christmas treats, and nobody noticed. And it just meant that we weren't still all eating Christmas sweets in January and even February sometimes. So I think we all need a lot less food for special occasions than we think we do. But whatever the occasion is, don't shop early because the temptation to eat that food and then go back and buy more will just be too much. So a little strategy for you that I've used in the past that may or may not work for you, but I'll suggest it so you can see, is have a role model. So let's talk about Cindy Crawford. I mentioned her earlier. Perhaps you could think, when you find yourself in a situation, just think, what would Cindy Crawford do here? Or whoever it is, what would Taylor Swift do here? What would whoever the person that you like and admire, what would they do in a situation that you find yourself in? And kind of step into their shoes a little bit and think, well, hang on, you know, Taylor Swift, she does a lot of sort of dancing and physical things, so you know, she'd probably go and do some stretches, or you know, I don't know, but whatever you think that person would do. And that can really help you with changing your mindset. It certainly helped me changing my mindset from thinking in the old ways to thinking in the ways of the person that I want to be, the new person that I want to become, which is, or was at the time, as a slim person. So I hope that's helpful. What we're going to look at next is breaking habits and some more strategies for healthy weight loss. Okay, I'll see you soon.